How you doing, YouTube? This is AUAG Prepper coming at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be talking about the full moon. We're going to be talking about basically iPad Goat and Friday the 13th that happens on a full moon in September and how rare it is. It is a very rare event, just to give you a little detail before I begin. Basically, Friday the 13th landing on a full moon usually occurs basically once out of 19 to 20 years, but it is not only just a regular full moon this time, but it's also a micro moon, which even makes it even more rare. Now we're going to go over the meaning of the number 19. We're also going to be going over the meaning of the number 11. Also, we're going to be going over a few other things pertaining to the full moon. And also, we're going to be talking about in iPad Goat the full moon in that, which shows that in iPad Goat as well, and which type of full moon that iPad Goat is basically talking about. Now, SHTF, basically based off of some little message by the powers that be, should happen in the year 2019. It is shown in music videos, it is shown on the Economics Magazine Company, and it is also shown in many other aspects in different titles as well. Also, September is a very high watch month because subliminal messages that are being shown in the month of September that could be the time period of SHTF happening is shown as well, just like in 2019 is shown to be the year as well with the subliminal messages. Now, before I start, there's a YouTuber that commented on my channel stating something about the backwards 2019. And if you drop the 0 and turn the 2 around and bring the 1 over and put a dash between the 9, you get 912, which could be a high watch date for catastrophe happening on September 12th. Now, his name is Mac. I think it's the Mac08. But, I would like to thank the individual for giving that information across, because that definitely could be one of the puzzle pieces that we're basically looking for. Now, anybody who has information or possible subliminal message that they figured out that fits with the puzzle pieces that we're trying to basically figure out, please comment in the comment section. Now, if you're just commenting basically trollish stuff or shenanigans, please don't comment. We don't need that stuff here. We're trying to figure out something much greater than any type of joking around or whatever the case may be. We're trying to figure out something that's going to happen, that is going to be very catastrophic to the world. And if we could figure out things quicker, we can give out warning to many others as well. So please, those who are trying to start shenanigans, please don't do it. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. We're going to go back to basically Wendy Williams for my last video, and I just want to point out one thing. Basically, we already know that she is a puppet being used by the powers that be to basically show a event that's going to take place, or a possible event that's going to take place in New York City. And behind her has watery letters like water, and a wall like a blue, just like water as well. And this is basically going to be the next iPad Go 2 that takes place. That's going to be a catastrophic event. Now, when is the time period, or when could this possibly happen? The powers that be are showing us through the Mona Lisa that September could be the time period, if you watch my other videos. Also, they could be showing us the exact date of when this may take place. And the reason why is that I believe so is that this creature here. This creature is basically a wolf. Now, there's an old wives' tale that the wolf howls during the time of a full moon. Now, a full moon in the month of September happens between September 13th and September 15th. Now, there's different types of full moons. We have to figure out which full moon that the powers that be are talking about, and if that full moon that the powers that be are subliminally showing different subjects like iPad Goat and so forth is the time period of calamity, if that makes sense. Now, I'm not going to play this whole thing. I just want to play it a little bit just so you can see a little bit viewpoint that this is for sure a wolf. Now, we know that the old wives' tales tells us that wolves howl during the time of a full moon. And that's basically what the powers that be are basically getting across during this video, is that they're trying to tell us that this event, when she falls down representing New York City, is going to happen during a full moon, if that makes sense. Now we're going to click here. I typed in wolf howl, and you could do the same. And basically, what shows up is that there's wolves howling, and a lot of the pictures it has, and even some of the subjects here shows it says moon or full moon. And even some of the pictures shows a full moon where the wolf howls, and that's basically the old wives' tales that the Power B are basically using to get their point across. Now we're gonna go ahead and go here, and this individual that's going to be commenting in this video, he's going to tell us about the different phases of full moons throughout the year. And basically what we're trying to get at is that we already know that 2019 is a high watch year because the powers that be are using it to subliminally shown on the Economics Magazine company by the Rothschild family. That basically creates our dollar. So if 2019 is the year, all we have to do is try to figure out the month, and if we can figure out the month, then we have to figure out the date, and we could possibly do so through the moon phases. And there's a reason why they show us this, where the moon is transitioning over, as in the middle will be the full moon, if that makes sense, just not being shown. All right, so let's go ahead and go back. So I'm going to go ahead and play it, and he's going to tell you about the moon phases.
Every full moon has a special name. There's the wolf moon, the snow moon, the worm moon, the sprouting grass moon, the flower moon, the strawberry moon, the thunder moon, the sturgeon moon, the harvest moon, the hunter's moon, the beaver moon, and the long night's moon. Each named.
Now, one interesting thing that he states is that he talks about the first moon being in January called the wolf moon. Now that could be that could be one of the moons that the powers that be are trying to subliminally shown. That could be the time period of start of calamities, but I believe it's going to be pointing more towards the harvest moon. And the wolf on the old wives' tale, when you read about it, they howl during the time of a full moon, and it doesn't dictates when on the full moon, if that makes sense. Also, another little history note on Friday the 13th. They made a lot of horror films based off of Friday the 13th. And also, an interesting note is that when you look at horror films with, like, say, werewolves, um, a man basically turns into a werewolf during the time of a full moon. And even other horror movies, you have the wolf howling during the time of a full moon in a lot of horror films. And then you have films pointing, horror films pointing to Friday the 13th as well. And it's just interesting how Friday the 13th this year lands on a full moon during the time of September, which September is a very high subliminal watch date of a possible time of calamities. Now let's go ahead and read this, and we can get a little gist. Basically, the moon. Let me see. Let me go ahead and read here. Okay. What sounds like we'll go over Friday the 13th first. What sounds like the beginning of a bad horror film will be reality this week when the full harvest moon rises as the sun sets on Friday the 13th. For the first time in nearly 20 years, this year's harvest moon, the full moon that coincides most closely with the fall equinox on September 23rd, falls on that the superstition among us consider the unluckiest day according to Farmer's Almanac. Nationwide, we haven't had a Friday the 13th full moon since October 13th, 2000. The Almanac reported, and it won't happen again until August 13th to 2049. So we already know that this is a very rare event for Friday the 13th to land on a time period of a full moon event or a full moon harvest moon. Now, what makes this even more rare is that this is not just an average full moon harvest moon. This is a full moon harvest moon micro moon, if that makes sense. Now, let me see if I can find it so I can read it to you. I believe it's down here somewhere. Oh, it's right here. Okay. It will also be at its furthest orbited point from the Earth on Friday, making the moon appear about 14% smaller, and that's what makes it a micromoon. It's a very interesting moon. According to the Almanac, it's been dubbed a micromoon as a result. So this is more of a rarity than compared to back in the year 2000. But nonetheless, when the Friday the 13th does land on a full moon, it's a very rare event. The last one was October 13th on a Friday, of course. Now, why is this important? This is important because Friday the 13th is a very interesting date. You have, and they point out one interesting thing about down here. But while I'm looking for it, I'll go ahead and tell you about the Knight Templars. The Knight Templars was basically an organization that basically answered to the Pope. They're almost like a branch organization from the Catholic Church. And basically, what happened is that they were gaining way too much power, and they were basically building infrastructures like fortresses or churches and gaining a lot of wealth throughout Europe. They're also helping pilgrims travel to the Holy Land after the first crusade. Later in 1307, I believe it is, that was their time period of the fall of the Knight Templars through basically King Philip, I think it is, France. And, the Catholic Church likes to basically say that they didn't have any part of that, but they definitely did. Greed and power, that's basically what it is. And the Catholic Church was basically working under the table against the Knight Templars because they basically were going against, or was at the time was not fitting the powers that be agenda, if that makes sense. All right, so basically on Friday the 13th, there was hundreds and hundreds of Knight Templars that were arrested, and later on, days following preceding the night Friday the 13th, a lot of them were tortured and even killed. And that's basically was the end of the downfall, the start of the end of the downfall of the Knight Templars. Also, on Friday the 13th, according to the History Channel, negative associations with Friday the 13th are rooted in biblical traditions. 13 guests attended the Last Supper before Jesus was crucified on Good Friday, which is very, very interesting as well. So, Friday the 13th has a very historical aspect to it. And this particular Friday the 13th in September, in the month of September, is a very rare one. It's also a full moon, and I'm gonna go ahead and point to iPad Goat real quick, which shows a full moon as well. And before I do that, let me go ahead and go back here real quick. I know I'm jumping around. Sorry about that. At the 15-minute mark, I'm probably going to stop this video and then redo the second part. This is going to be the first part. I'm going to go ahead and read you one more thing. See if I can find it. And this basically describes what the harvest moon is. Okay, so I'm going to read this a little bit right here. The harvest moon is a unique because it rises about an hour later each day, right around the time of the sun is setting. According to the almanac, if I'm saying it right, the moon typically arises almost an hour later each day during the rest of the year. This results in an abundance of bright moonlight early in the evening, which helped farmers and crews harvesting their summer-grown crops. The old farmers' almanac states, hence it's called the harvest moon. So that gives you an idea of why it's called the harvest moon. And just to go back to what I was saying, we're trying to figure out which moon that the powers that be are subliminally showing that will be the full moon that causes the calamities, because they're showing here her being a representation of New York City or the Statue of Liberty. The watery letters being the form of the catastrophe, and the moon howling at the full moon being the time and date of when this could occur. And we already know through the Economics Magazine Company, 2019 is most likely the year, right? And we know through the Mona Lisa, because they have it here, the Mona Lisa, and also through iPad Go, which we're going to talk about now, that September could also be the time period. And also September being Friday the 13th with a full moon. The wolf howling at the full moon. That's the reason why they have the wolf here, subliminally showing that. So very, very interesting stuff. Now let me show you one more thing before I wrap this up and start the new one. Oh, right here. Now we talked about the harvest moon and why it's called the harvest moon. Another thing is that a lot of harvests, the Old Testament, even up till this day in farming now, a lot of harvest occurs during the time of summer, but also late summer as well. Also, biblically, the rapture is considered a form of a holy harvest through God. It's also, the time period of when basically Christians will be brought out of the tribulation. And I'll go ahead and read it. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of an archangel, and with the trumpet of call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. Now, this in Jesus and even apostles in other books uses this as a reference of harvesting. It talks about in one parable with the sickle, where an angel comes down and uses a sickle to harvest up the crops. So basically, the rapture is another form of a holy harvest, if that makes sense. Now, the powers that be also have their form of harvest. Now, it's a satanic one, but when their form of the harvest occurs, it's basically how God's basically death going into life through Jesus Christ of the rapture. Theirs is basically whatever left that we have right now, basically going to death. So it's basically the opposite effect. If that makes sense. And that's why this child here, who basically died during the time of the war, which is most likely Psalms 83 war, and you can see him here. Sorry, my computer's moving slow today. So you can see the child here. He's basically has fallen during the time of this war that will take place in the near future. And they show him rising again. And basically, what they're telling us is that they're giving us a time point of when catastrophe will happen, if that makes sense. And they do it through the moon. And what they're telling us is that the type of full moon that they're showing is a harvest moon. And the reason why we know that, let me turn this down a little bit. My computer is moving like really slow. So I may actually end this here. We're gonna go ahead and start off back on here, picking back up with the child, and also the full moon, which is also a harvest moon. And I'll go ahead and describe that in the next video. All right, thank you, and I'll be posting the next video soon. God bless.